So it seems like, I mean, they are there. So that's a good opportunity to meet, face to face. But it's almost like, so what? And I guess my question is that, how do you see the Prime Minister Abe trying to take an advantage of that G20? I mean, at one point, I think he was trying to make a big deal. He went to Iran and trying to negotiate with the leaders of Iran and trying to go between U.S. and Iran. It didn't quite succeed. And instead, they got bombed. So it just kind of went the other way. It almost looks like. And U.S. and China, what can Japan do? And yet, I think some people were sort of expecting, and probably Prime Minister Abe is the one who felt that everybody expected him to take a much more active role and sort of go in between because of the physical and the geographical.
I was actually just talking with this about with Watanabe Senja before, and I was a little bit surprised that more attention wasn't paid to Prime Minister Abe's trip to Iran. I thought that would garner more attention globally than it did. I mean, obviously it was overshadowed by the attacks on the tankers, but I was a bit surprised that it kind of didn't grab the world's attention as I think it should have done. But I would say this about Prime Minister Abe: for a Japanese leader, he's probably more recognizable globally than probably many of his, at least since Prime Minister Koizumi. When I went to the G8 meeting in the US, I think it was in 2005, it was a sea island in Georgia, and in the media center, somebody had painted pictures of all the leaders, and they put them up on the wall. And he goes, oh yes, that's Bush there, and this is that's Tony Blair. You could see from the pictures, but when you got down to the Japanese Prime Minister, and that time it was Koizumi, it was just kind of a very vague picture of an Asian man. So that's at that time there was really Japan didn't really have a presence there. It really was punching under its weight. When they have the leaders' press conferences. So when the G7's finished, everyone does their separate press conferences. Right. So of course everyone's going to the US President's press conference, but nobody wants to go to the Japanese. Prime Minister Abe's global presence is not at the level of obviously President Trump or some of the other major leaders of major industrial countries. He has nonetheless attained a certain recognition that is rare for a Japanese Prime Minister.
So is that good?
I would say it's good, yes.
At least we do have a presence.
Yes, I mean, and I say Japan punches below its weight. It's a major economy. It's still the world's third biggest economy. Japan is a strong economic power, and should be diplomatically should be playing at a much higher level than it is, I think.
And that's good thing. And one of the reasons why the Abe is taking a kind of leadership in Japan, domestically, also internationally, because he simply stays longer than any other. That's very important. I think the short-term leader doesn't have a problem. So now Abe is one of the longest leadership.
Yes.
And when Abe played golf with Trump, I think what was the subject they talked about it? I think somebody told me one subject is what kind of the atmosphere of a multilateral meeting such as a G7 or G20. That Trump asked Abe. Because Trump is not so comfortable with such kind of a multilateral meeting. He's more comfortable with a one-on-one bilateral meeting. By the way, this time Trump preparing a lot of bilateral meeting in Osaka. Right. Not only U.S. China, but U.S. Turkey, U.S. Saudi, U.S. Russia, and U.S. Japan, and many. I'm sure that Trump doesn't like 1/20. He really wanted to do one-on-one. So, and it seems to me he has some kind of a sense of on one-on-one he know how to utilize his experience, business experience to the world. But if a multilateral, very difficult for him to see the moment and showing his kind of the attractive or very good deal ability. So, you know, and Abe is on the contrary. Maybe Abe is more comfortable with the multilateral, but at the same time, Abe's credit is he's serving longer, but at the same time also.
I would say, I think one advantage that Prime Minister Abe has that other leaders from other major economies don't have is the Japanese public. So I'm from the UK, and it's interesting to see what happens when Trump visits the UK as when he visits Japan. He comes to the UK, there are mass protests. You know, there's the baby Trump balloon.
Right. Yes.
You know, so the Prime Minister of the UK is under pressure from the UK public, from the British public, to say things to Trump. When Trump makes a statement about something, they have to say something, because if they don't, they're going to lose support from their own public. But in Japan, that's not the case.
Right.
You know, I think it seems to me that there's an understanding in this country that you just got to play nice with the American president.
So what do you think? The Japanese public are very nice to the guests, so to speak. I mean, we are the country of omotenashi after all, right? So, I mean, if you don't want to be rude to anybody, I mean, that's just kind of like whatever, the beginning and the basic thing. And
simply because if we do not have any response, it sounds like not thinking anything.
I see.
It's not getting interested in political situation.
Yeah.
So I think no response is basically bad thing.
Yeah. So it doesn't mean that they agree with Trump or anything. They welcome his policy and all that. They just don't want to show anything.
No, but I just think that Mr. Kelly's observation was really interesting. That you know, whereas the British people tend to protest, however, Japanese just played nice with the guest. And since you've covered Japan for a pretty long period of time, I think it was a really interesting observation, and I just want to ask actually a question.
Sure.
How do you see the difference? You know, on top of the just Japanese playing nice with the guest, even to the U.S. president or other guests. I mean, overall, and the British people don't play nice with the guests. Is that what you're saying, or is there any other observation?
Well, it's not a case of play nice, but it's a case of like showing how you feel. You know, there's a strong tradition of protest in the UK that has been for a very long time. Actually, I was talking to a Korean friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, and I was asking him why is it that in Korea you have mass protests and people get angry and, you know, cause a lot of trouble, but in Japan you don't have that.
Right.
I mean, I guess you used to have that. I mean, in the 60s people were more active. But what's the difference? And his answer to me was, well, because in Korea we fought and we won democracy, but in Japan you never did. It was given to you. So you don't understand, the Japanese don't understand the value of protest, don't understand the value of democracy. And I think, you know, what he was saying was right, and I think in the UK too, democracy was won through many, many years of protest. Rights were gained through protest. So there's a tradition there, and people understand the value of standing up against authority, whether that be their own authority or that be the authority of somebody else, like Donald Trump. So while it's maybe easy for Abe with a public that really doesn't seem to care so much. You know, I guess the question that the Japanese people need to think about is that good for Japan? Does that leave you vulnerable to a future where, you know, somebody will come in and do something, a despot, a dictator, and you would just roll over and you wouldn't stand up against that?
Thank you very much.
No, let me add to the fact in the protest in the UK. Protest or demonstration of UK is not just for anti-Trump, but a pro-Trump demonstration there too. Clearly there is a reflection of the Brexit, pro-Brexit, anti-Brexit. So pro-Brexit people is a pro-Trump somehow. So that's why the Trump is really saying very good things for the pro-Brexit people, politicians such as Boris Johnson.
Yeah, it's one of the things which just kind of not bothers me, but sort of make me wonder is that you don't really see too many people angry here. People don't get mad. And it seems like you follow, and I said, and I think it shows that in order to be angry, you need a lot of energy. And I don't see too much of an energy. And
My wife gets very angry.
so at least she has some energy.
And also, Japanese people at least showed angry against when Abe tried to pass the security legislation, right?
Right.
What's the difference?
I think a major difference there is once the legislation was passed though, the protest evaporated, there were no more protests. In fact, the organizations disbanded that were doing the protests.
Okay, well, some people think that's good, that we are very hospitable. And take a look at what's going on in Hong Kong. I mean, there's this incredible, large-scale demonstrations. And I think that's in check, too. I think they've seen the largest demonstrations that they've ever seen. And Turkey, I mean, the mayor's election in Istanbul was won by the opposition. So that could be a very interesting development in this country, well, partly because I'm going to Turkey. So that's why I was just looking at what's going on there. And it turned out that the mayor, they did the re-election, and the opposition won with the larger, margin. So I was wondering whether I could still go to Turkey or not. But anyway, so that's what it is.